Hello, I am Susie Best. This is my name sign, and I'm a deaf mentor with the Deaf Mentor program in Tucson, Arizona. And we would like to introduce the parents of different deaf mentors, and I will introduce mine. This is my mother, and I will let her introduce herself. Hi, I am Carolyn Best. I am Susie Best's mom. I'm thrilled to have her join us for this interview, and this interview will be helpful to parents with deaf children as she'll speak to what it's like to raise a deaf child, for myself, for example. And I've prepared a few interview questions. Do you have other deaf family members? Yes. So when I was a girl, my father had two cousins, and they would visit us. They're from Michigan, and that was my first experience with having deaf cousins around. And at the time, I didn't know a lot about them because they were not that close, but it really was interesting for me, and I was about 9 at the time, and I didn't realize it at the time, but that was my first experience, preparation really for having my own deaf child someday. Susie, my second daughter out of 3 daughters, was born deaf. And also years later, my cousin on my mother's side also has a deaf son. So her father, my grandfather, has 2 deaf cousins. Do you mind talking a bit more about them? So the most that I really knew about them was that they were very highly educated, and they had told me one of the things they thought was really important to help with their education was the use of total communication. Years later, I had gotten back in touch with them after I found out that Susie was deaf, and they did encourage me to use total communication with her. And so that's what we did. How old was I when you taught me sign language? Well, first so Susie asked how old she was when I taught her sign, but really before I go into that, I do think it's important to know that when she was 12 months old, I talked to the pediatrician about being concerned that she was not using simple words of a 1-year-old child, like mama, things like that. And I got a stern talking to from the pediatrician saying, shame on me for comparing children. So 18 months later, we were getting ready for a trip to go to Texas for Thanksgiving. We were going through Christmas decorations because we knew that we would not be home in time to put them up. So we were putting them up early. And so anyways, we had this big cowbell, and we were ringing it, trying to get Susie's attention. And she would not look at us. And so I realized it just didn't make sense to me. So I had told my husband maybe we should get her ears checked out because she doesn't seem to be hearing. Maybe she has an ear infection. So I called the doctor, and they said to bring her in. So the next day we went to the doctor, and I was not concerned at all, thinking I was right about my diagnosis. And so anyways, that was the day that I found out that Susie could not hear. So she found out that I was deaf at 18 months old. So what was it like to raise a deaf child? What were the positives, and what were some negative experiences you had? Can you mention a few? A lot of the experiences I had were positive, but also keep in mind I was a young mom. One of the things that had happened about a week before we found out that you were deaf, I was at church, And there was a woman in front of me who was signing to a 5-year-old boy, and I was so fascinated by watching them. And after I had found out that Susie was deaf, I kept going back to Mass, looking for the woman. And finally, 2 weeks later, I saw her and I said, "Please help me. My daughter is deaf and I don't know where to begin." So she helped me sign up for sign language classes. She encouraged me to use total communication and got me to the right doctors. I mean, it was amazing how much she helped me. It was meant to be. Have you had any negative experiences that turned out positive? Well, that was a good experience for sure. Some of the challenges of having a deaf child is playing outside with other kids and maybe not noticing, like if, she went to go get the ball and not seeing a car coming, even because she couldn't hear. So that was a concern for us. So we really had to be sure to teach that she understood the importance of danger and taking care and being careful. And most of the kids in the neighborhood where we lived made every effort to learn sign language, so that was easy. Susie would not, if we were trying to get her attention, if she did something wrong, she would do this and ignore what we were trying to correct. I think for her sisters it was a challenge at times. But all of my girls, again, I have 3 daughters, the other 2 learned sign language from a very early age. In fact, Stephanie, my youngest, thanks to learning sign language, started to read at about 4 years old because she connected language and finger spelling. So there were a lot of good things about it too. Do you remember you told me something almost happening to Stephanie, my younger sister? Do you remember what had almost happened to her? When Susie was about 2.5, she came to me and said, "The baby is playing with poison," and this is the old sign for poison. Right, this is the old sign for poison. But she signed, "Mama, Mama, hurry, baby." And she was trying to tell me something. She was warning me about something. And so I went into the kitchen, and Stephanie, who was about 6 or 7 months at the time, was playing with Comet cleaner. So I was convinced forever that sign language was a great asset because she knew enough to communicate the danger to me. And my sister is alive because of that. So with having language, no barriers, being able to communicate. Did you want to share anything further about your experience raising me? Anything you wanted to add? I think one of the biggest handicaps for Susie was special education. Because during those days, when she was younger, they taught on a curve. So not like regular classes where the curve would be a typical bell curve. The curve is a little bit lower. And so Susie was blessed with being very bright, but she got bored with school because of that. And sometimes teachers put her in charge, and that frustrated her. She just wanted to be one of the kids. But I would say that's one of the biggest negatives. Last question. Do you have any words of wisdom for parents who don't know what to do having a deaf child? What advice would you give them? Well, I always said that Susie was not our deaf child, that she was our child. She's very bright. And I knew that she could do anything. She liked to ride horses, which she did. She would compete in races and didn't always get first place, though she tried. Sometimes she couldn't hear the gun go off, or she didn't hear what was being asked of her to do, and she competed. But she usually got second, and she but wanted first. And so there were challenges for her too. I think the biggest thing is only you can make your child handicapped. Susie is not handicapped. She just can't hear. And some of the people that approach her sometimes, I think, are more handicapped than she is. I think if we all teach our children to sign in a family, in the neighborhood, or whoever is connected to your child, it will open their world for them. Susie went on to get her degree from Portland State University. She was one of 5 deaf students, and the only one that I know of that was on the honor roll. So she graduated with honors as a deaf person, but I say she graduated with honors. Period. So thank you, and thank you for your time and sharing your experiences. I'm sure all the other parents will appreciate that a lot. Yeah, I hope they will. Thank you for watching.